I counted them up. 13 brands and over 100 different options on the BRS website alone. If you're ever going to successfully choose a protein skimmer, you're going to need to understand how they work. A pump creates tiny air bubbles that collect in the skimmer body. Fish food and fish waste are attracted to the surface of those bubbles and pushed upward through the conical skimmer body and into the collection cup. There are 3 terms that seasoned hobbyists like to throw around that may confuse a beginner. Skimmate. It's the end result of a protein skimmer. Skimmate is the smelly brown liquid that bubbles over into the collection cup and is a mix of water and fish food and waste. The second phrase is wet skim or wet skimmate. A wet skim is skimmate that contains a large percentage of water compared to fish food and fish waste. Light brown in color, a wet skim is produced by a higher airflow rate and larger bubbles. A dry skim, on the other hand, is a skimmate that contains a smaller percentage of water compared to fish food and fish waste. Dark brown in color, a dry skim is produced by less airflow and smaller air bubbles. One is not necessarily better than the other, but the one you're going to want to choose will depend on the size of your skimmer and the needs of your system. We now know that a skimmer removes fish food and fish waste, but so does a sponge and so does a filter sock. Where a protein skimmer excels is in filtering out dissolved fish food and fish waste, or as we call it in this hobby, dissolved organics. Mechanical filtration such as sponges and filter socks can only catch the larger particulate matter, the undissolved things. A protein skimmer then picks up the slack and removes a lot more. But you may be wondering, why is it important to remove these things? Because all organics, dissolved or otherwise, will break down into ammonia, nitrate, and phosphate eventually. Ammonia is highly toxic to your fish, while high levels of nitrates and phosphates can fuel nuisance algae growth. So while it is true that protein skimmers don't directly remove nitrates and phosphates, they do remove the dissolved organics before they have a chance to break down into those things. Even though every skimmer does the exact same thing, it is shocking to see how many different shapes and sizes they come in. First, you have internal single pump protein skimmers. These go in your sump. They're powered by a single AC or DC pump, and that pump is either mounted inside the skimmer body itself or outside the body. Number 2 are recirculating skimmers. These can be either internally or externally plumbed and are powered by 2 pumps instead of 1. One pump is responsible for producing the air bubbles, and the other pump feeds tank water into the protein skimmer for filtration. Next, we have external skimmers. These are watertight options that are placed outside of your sump. These are great for freeing up space in your small sump, or if your skimmer is just too big for the sump you have. Fourth up are HOB or hang on the back protein skimmers. These single AC or DC pump skimmers are great for those of us that don't have a sump. But be aware, they're definitely a bit of an eyesore. This category are what we call nano skimmers, and these are specifically designed to either fit in a rear filtration chamber or in a display tank itself. These compact protein skimmers generally won't remove as much fish food and waste as their larger counterparts, but they may be a decent option for tanks with limited space or no sumps. Before buying and installing a protein skimmer, the more important question is, do I even need a protein skimmer? And the answer may be no. In essence, protein skimmers are another form of mechanical filtration. While that statement isn't entirely true, since there are some biochemical reactions that are also taking place, it will at least help us to figure out if we need a protein skimmer. Can you keep your nitrates and phosphates relatively low using more traditional mechanical filtration methods, such as sponges and filter socks, or even by adding a macroalgae refugium or maybe installing an algae scrubber? If you answered yes, you probably don't need a protein skimmer, at least not yet anyways. In fact, installing a protein skimmer on a low nutrient system can actually be detrimental by pulling out too many dissolved organics, which can bottom out your nitrate and phosphate levels, which are super important for coral health and growth. But if you notice your nitrates and your phosphates slowly start creeping up and regular water changes just aren't cutting it anymore, then definitely consider getting a protein skimmer. Choosing the right protein skimmer can be It is super daunting for a beginner, and it's even still daunting for me. By answering the following 5 questions, you'll be able to choose the right protein skimmer for your tank. Number 1, where will you put the protein skimmer? You really have 5 options. You can put it in the sump, you can plumb it externally, you can put it in a rear filtration chamber, you can get a hang on the back version, or there's even one or two that can go directly inside your display tank. If you have an all-in-one system and you plan on putting the protein skimmer in the rear filtration chamber, then you need a nano skimmer. And there are less than 10 options to choose from here at BRS, which makes choosing your first protein skimmer way easier. For hang on the back options, there are quite a few more out there, some of which put the pump inside the tank and others mount the pump outside the tank. If your tank does have a sump, then an internal protein skimmer is likely your best choice. You can choose a skimmer with the pump inside the body to save space, or with the pump on the outside of the body to increase the reaction chamber size. Whatever you end up choosing, measure twice to make sure it will fit where you intend it to. Question number 2, how many gallons is your tank? You've already narrowed down the protein skimmer based on where you're gonna put it. Now you need to select the correctly sized protein skimmer. Simply match the water volume of your tank to the recommendations for each individual protein skimmer. Question number 3, how heavy is your tank's bioload? This question is actually really difficult for a beginner to understand and parse out because there's no frame of reference for what a light, medium, or heavy bioload is. I would venture to say that most beginner hobbyists would fall somewhere within the medium bioload region. A heavy bioload tank would be packed with fish and probably wall-to-wall corals, which doesn't really describe most beginner tanks. When it comes to protein skimmers, bigger is not better. I repeat, it is better to go with a smaller protein skimmer than a larger protein skimmer. Err on the side of too small. Question number 4, do you want an AC pump or a DC pump? Controllable DC pumps are by far the easiest way to control the amount of air that enters the protein skimmer body. And it is precisely the amount of air that will produce either a wet skim or a dry skim. Simply put, if you can afford a skimmer with a DC pump, then go with a DC pump. And the 5th and final question is, do you want a recirculating protein skimmer? If you're a beginner on a budget or just have limited space, then just go with a single pump internal skimmer. But if you have the space and can afford the larger price tag that goes along with a recirculating protein skimmer, then go ahead. It will give you the most options for fine-tuning your skimmer. Like I said at the beginning, there are over 100 different protein skimmers available here at BRS, but here are some of my favorites based on category. The best HOB or hang on the back protein skimmer, I actually have 2 choices for you. First up is the Aquamax HOB 1.5. It comes with a modified AC CJ pump, which is housed inside the skimmer body, an adjustable collection cup height for fine tuning, and it's designed for tanks between 40 and 75 gallons. HOB skimmer option number 2 is actually the one that I use right over here on my JBJ RF45 mixed reef tank, and that's the Reef Octopus Classic 1000. With slight adjustments to the collection cup height, I'm able to pull out super smelly, dark skim weekly, and it's rated for tanks from 55 to 100 gallons. Category number 2 is my favorite budget-friendly in-sump protein skimmer, and this is the Reef Octopus 110 INT. First off, with over 100 reviews and almost a perfect 5-star rating, it's easy to see how this got the BRS recommended stamp. With an externally mounted AC pump, this skimmer is recommended for tanks up to 75 gallons. Category number 3 is my favorite DC pump protein skimmer, and this is the Reef Octopus Regal 150 SSS with a Varios DC pump. With a space-saving, internally mounted DC pump, the 5-speed controller makes adjusting air intake easy. It includes a gate valve for fine water level adjustments and a safety overflow float switch, which will turn off the skimmer pump before the collection cup overflows, which will save you so many headaches. This protein skimmer is rated for larger tanks from 100 to 210 gallons. I'm not gonna lie to you, depending on which protein skimmer you buy, you will either have to do virtually no assembly or follow some super complicated assembly instructions that will make you want to pull out your hair. My first suggestion is to watch YouTube videos. There are YouTube videos on how to assemble pretty much every, if not every single protein skimmer option at BRS. And I know Thomas has made some excellent videos which will help a lot. Secondly, let me just point out the various parts of a protein skimmer and what they do, so at least you have an understanding, which should help you put your new skimmer together. This is the Reef Octopus Classic 150 INT that came with my Reef Octopus Lux 90 tank. It's a great skimmer with almost no assembly because the pump is external and the body is permanently mounted to the frame. The large chamber here is the reaction chamber where the bubbles mix with the dissolved organics. This is the bubble plate, which reduces turbidity and helps disperse the bubbles better. We call this portion the neck, and it is designed in a conical shape to help force the dissolved organics and bubbles up into the collection cup. The collection cup is removable and is what you will empty on a weekly basis. Water enters the protein skimmer via the pump here, and it exits here. The gate valve controls the water height. You open it up all the way for a lower water height, and you close it for a higher water height. This air silencer draws air into the pump via the venturi fitting here. And the needle wheel impeller is inside, and it helps chop up the air bubbles into smaller pieces. You've got your protein skimmer set up and running, and now it is time to tune it. You didn't think it would work right out of the box, did you? Most hobbyists think that they know how to correctly tune a protein skimmer, but they are doing these two things wrong, which is absolutely killing the productivity of their protein skimmer. Don't make the same mistake by watching this video right over here. And as always, everybody, thanks for watching. Happy reefing, be well. We'll see you next time.